Hello everyone, Happy New Year, and welcome back to The Walk for episode 4. Pretty exciting time, I suppose. It's a new year and we have the opportunity to jump back into this podcast. I was hoping to get one out before the end of last year, but it was just a bit chaotic, and to have some time off, and much needed time off, was needed. For the mind, and also just to spend some time with the family. Pretty busy year for us as a collective, and to be able to sit down and sort of reflect a little bit and sort of map out the next few stages of where I sort of wanted to take this podcast. I'm the host, Jake Donnelly, for those who haven't been on here before or spoken to me before. And I suppose, today's episode is a really, really important one. I've called this one Learning to Carry the Weight. And I suppose it's about sort of coping mechanisms for overwhelmed fathers, myself being one. We get overwhelmed a lot of the time. And it's how to allow yourself to come away from situations and better yourself each time following a certain situation, I suppose. So being able to step back and go, okay, how could I have handled that a little bit better? Or what are some tools that, you can use in your day-to-day to allow you to step back and have a bit more clarity around how to approach fatherhood, parenthood, even just the day-to-day life. I suppose if you listen to the first 3 episodes, you'll know how sort of, I suppose, heavy life can get for a father or a partner or a caretaker, especially when you're carrying a lot more than people realise. And that comes with parenthood. You're always going to carry those things, and how to manage them is a big one, and something that I constantly am trying to work on. And this is something that I'm pretty passionate about. It is not sort of hiding the hard times or the down times, but allowing myself to not bottle them up like I have in the past. I suppose work through them and sort of sit with those moments as best as I can, so that the next time something occurs like that, or a situation arises, I have a better way of coping with it. We'll be speaking about sort of the weights that are carried, and I suppose the invisible ones, and the ones that like men don't really talk about, and the ones that sort of crush you pretty quietly. And more importantly, like I said, how we manage those weights, how we cope, how we survive, and how we slowly and intentionally rebuild ourselves. Like I've said before, I've rebuilt time and time again, and it kind of at times can feel like you're rebuilding daily. Other times it can feel like you're rebuilding every minute. But I suppose that's the beauty in the chaos of being a father and being a provider. I suppose this episode's for every father who's ever felt very overwhelmed. Numerous times throughout my journey I've been extremely overwhelmed, and it felt like life sort of wouldn't give me a moment to breathe. It's more about sort of trying to juggle all these different weights, being a provider and a partner and a dad and a caretaker and a worker and a good employee and a good friend. While I suppose what a lot of us do, and what I've seen over the years of speaking to young men and fathers, is that we sort of bury them a lot. And the key message from today is you're not alone. And I hope this episode allows you to feel that you're not alone, and that you are going through very similar things to what a lot of people are going through. I suppose we'll start with probably something that's probably not said enough, and I think being a father is pretty heavy. It's not just the day-to-day stuff. So you're changing of the nappies, and you're working, and you're cooking, and you're cleaning, and you're trying to be present. But the emotional and mental weight that I suppose we carry with all these things in life and all these pressures. And I suppose the thing about father, especially in the modern world, is that we carry so much more than we could ever speak about. And some of us, including myself, we carry a bit of trauma, and that's an extremely difficult thing to carry, something that if you don't process it well and learn to process it and learn to sit with it and understand it, it can really become debilitating and wear you down extensively. And that's something you don't want to be doing time and time again, because you end up getting to a point where you get through, I suppose, a bad patch. And then all of a sudden, you think you're doing really well and you're on the right path. And then you snatch back to reality pretty quick because you have another meltdown or a breakdown. And I've been there time and time again. You know, raising a son with complex needs, it sort of felt like the weight sits on my shoulders and my chest every day. And it's, you know, and it still does a lot of the time, and it has throughout the entire journey. I mean, I've gone through a lot of times, even times on this break where I've sort of woken up in the morning and I'm in like, what's today going to hold? And will he be okay? Will something happen? Can I handle if it does? Like Christmas time, Sol had a little bit of a meltdown. I had to take him from Christmas lunch and drop him back with my parents and then come back and get my partner. And, you know, that sort of drive with him, and he's sort of screaming in the car and you're trying to calm him down and regulate him. And then you're driving back and just like silence, no radio, no music on. And you're just sort of thinking like, fuck, like, how could the morning have started so well in the afternoon and like this? And then, you know, you've got another day of going and seeing people, and you've got to really, like, with a child who does have complex needs, you got to sit there and really talk them through what the next day entails, who's going to be there, what it's going to be like, you know, is the weather going to be okay? Is it going to be too bright for him? There's so many factors that in my personal life that I've got to factor into it. And it can feel extremely exhausting. And I suppose, you know, this is invisible backpack that we sort of carry as fathers, and it's packed with emotions that we never really unpack. And that's, I think, because we never really learned how to, and we're told not to really show emotion from a young age. And that, I suppose, is what leads to a lot of men getting overwhelmed with not just the responsibilities, but I suppose the silence around those responsibilities. We don't really talk about it. We don't ask for help. We don't want to be seen as struggling, but the truth is, like, we're all human and we all struggle. And the moment that we sort of, I suppose, acknowledge that, the load becomes a little bit lighter, and then clarity starts to come with it. So that's something I do want to touch on more as we move through this, is that, yeah, as this sort of gets a little bit easier, the clarity comes in the moment, in the heat of the moment. It's extremely difficult to, I suppose, see any clarity, and you can sort of feel like there's a million things coming at you at once when you're in those moments, and the smallest things can trigger you, and then you carry that into the next day, and then you're not really giving your full self to your family and your children. So just know that as you do progress through this, and this isn't speaking from someone who's an expert either, like I still have to work on this time and time again, but as you move through life, I suppose, and parenting, clarity starts to sort of come with it. And that's if you want it to come. Like, I see some people who they sort of just drop their head and go, oh, well, this is parenting. This is what it is. I give up everything. I give it to all my kids, you know, everything to my kids. And I look at that and I go, yeah, that's a beautiful thing and it's noble, but also we need to make sure we look after ourselves. And watched a really good documentary last night, actually, called Scene. And there was one of the experts on there was saying that a lot of the time when he has children brought in, he actually tells the parents they need to go work on themselves as well. And he goes, it's one of the hardest things to do, because they're like, I don't have the time. I don't have the capabilities to be able to go and sit there, or I've never unpacked that, and I don't have time to unpack that and sit with that and work on myself. But he said in it, he goes, like, usually it's the parents that are the key to turning everything around for the child and also themselves, and then it creates a little bit more harmony in the home. I suppose, you know, the unhealthy coping mechanisms that men fall into is probably what I want to touch on next. And when that load does become too heavy, most men sort of fall into the same patterns time and time again. And I've fallen into the same patterns time and time again. And, you know, I'm not saying it out of judgment. I'm saying it because I live it. And I've fallen into every one of these different positions in my life. And early days of parenthood was extremely rough. But now I still fall into these lulls and these lows, but it's sort of about how you can manage those lows to then slowly come back up. You don't want to, in my opinion, you don't sort of want to hit a peak and then drop and then hit a peak and drop. You kind of want to, You're going to have lows, but then it's about coming up and then sort of sustaining and plateauing out and keeping like a baseline level of content and clarity and coping. And then you'll have your little highs, but just sort of trying to keep it at that plateau level where it's manageable. I suppose the first one sort of is numbness. The feeling when nothing really hits anymore, nothing excites you, nothing scares you, and nothing really gets you through. And to be honest, that's emotional burnout. And I've probably been feeling that a lot over the last sort of 4 years. And from emotional burnout, then comes the anger. And that's something you don't want to have. And it's not because you're a bad bloke or because you're a bad parent, but it's just because it's the easiest emotion, especially for men, to access. It's a mask, I suppose, for fear, sadness, overwhelm, helplessness. And we just think that by being angry and being that tough bloke is going to sort out all our problems, but really it doesn't. It actually can impact the family a lot more and the home life and also yourself. No one, I believe, wants to be angry or wants to be bad, but it is just an easy thing for men to fall into, just to snap and almost have this level of fear so that people are like, oh, I can't do that around him again. But what I've found is it's more beautiful being able to sit there and actually discuss things with your children or with your partner in a controlled setting. And when you do feel yourself getting a little bit angry, maybe just like pull back and have, take a deep breath and think about how you can switch the narrative in your head to approach, I suppose, the situation a bit calmer and a bit more natural to how you want to be seen. It's that cliche thing of, you talk to people how you want to be talked to or treat people how you want to be treated. And with children, it's nothing truer. You need to be able to talk to them on a level where, you can't, I found over the years, you can't sort of demand respect. You kind of got to earn it. And with kids, it's the same thing. You do have to earn their respect, which is pretty tricky when they're so young. But, at the same time, you're their beacon of light. But you're also someone that they're going to look up to, and you need to be able to get that respect from them. And that comfortable space and that safe space for them to be able to, I suppose, open up and be the truest versions of themselves. I suppose once you've gone from sort of that anger, it's then withdrawal. You pull back, you stop seeing mates, you stop talking about anything meaningful, you get really quiet and you sort of go inside yourself. And that's one way I have gone before, and it's not healthy whatsoever. I'm sort of at a point now, I suppose, where that withdrawal is sort of looking like potentially moving away or going to another state and starting life there. And it was withdrawal for a while, the idea of it. I think it was to run from something. Now it's sort of, I've sat there with it long enough that now I sort of see it as it's my opportunity to start afresh and give my children a life that gives them quality of life, I suppose. And, with me being the only provider financially in the home because of my son's condition, and obviously with the other child is only a year old and they're still very dependent on us parents, especially my wife. I've been able to sort of flip that narrative and now realize that probably moving away is the best thing for us to gain some silence and quiet time as a family. But for a while it was a lot of withdrawal. I wouldn't talk about anything. Mates would say, we're catching up for dinner or we're going to the pub for a beer, and I would always just talk myself out of it because in my situation, I can't really be fucked sitting there and going through the same conversations I've got to have about soul, which is normally what comes up a lot of the time. Where I've got to sit there and I've got to break down what Sol's up to, when his next surgery is, this and that. And it sort of just puts a dampener on the mood. And it's not because I'm not proud or I'm not, it's not that I don't want to talk about him. It's more a case of it just becomes exhausting, especially when that's your day to day. So the withdrawal thing's been massive for me. And there's another way you can go with it. And that's where you start to overwork, which is what I've done as well a lot of the time over the last sort of, I suppose, 4 years. You fill every minute of every day with something to keep yourself busy, I suppose, because, work just starts to become a distraction, becomes your escape. And I suppose, you start justifying it by going, I'm doing it for my family. And, my partner and I have had numerous sort of bickers over the years and small arguments about, I get to a point where I've done all these things I've just listed. And then I'm like, but I do this all for you. I do this, and it's sort of like, that's not healthy, because all it's doing is forcing you not to sit with things that you don't want to sit with. Some men, I suppose, will shut out with scrolling on their phone. Some will with drinking. Some will just shut down emotionally. And again, this isn't from a place of judgment. This is from a place of I've done it. And at times I still do it now, and it's something I need to work on. Probably not the drinking part. I've given up a lot of drinking. I had beers the other night with a couple of mates, and it was great at the time, but then I just was like, I'm not made for this anymore. And the recovery, was just didn't feel great. I just felt like a piece of shit, really, for having those drinks and letting my hair down a little bit. And that's not from a place of my partner or anyone makes you feel like that. It's just because I'm really am striving to be the best version of me that I can be as a father. And I suppose, the saddest part with all these things is that the coping mechanisms like the ones I've listed are really silent killers, and they don't sort of destroy you overnight. They just chip away at you slowly. And they erode your joy, your relationships, your presence, piece by piece. And then one day you sort of look at yourself and you think, like, what happened to me, or who am I? And it's about getting yourself out of those places. And again, these coping mechanisms that I hope to touch on, or well, we'll be touching on later in this piece, hopefully can help people deal with that moment in time. Because I've sort of sat there a lot of times, and I think I've spoken about it before, but I used to have a long drive to and from work from where we were living previously, and it used to be like I'd sit there and just silence some afternoons, be driving, no music on, like just the sound of the fucking aircon blaring in my face, and I used to sit there and be like who is Jake Donnelly? Like, who am I? Who am I as a father? Like, do my kids enjoy time with me? Does my wife enjoy even having me around? And it can be a dark and lonely place. And that was because I never really opened up about it. But then I found that once I started opening up about it and talking about it and sort of understanding why I fall into these ruts and why I fall into these moments, it made it a little bit easier. The pressure of being a father in today's world is pretty hard. I suppose we'll talk about pressure first. There's a lot of pressure on fathers. There is I've said it before, on mothers as well. But on fathers, it just feels like it's this never-ending pressure. You got the pressure to provide and the pressure to show up when you're sort of running on empty. You got the pressure to be emotionally present at home and to fix everything and to never fail. And it's just like relentless. Like, everyone comes to you for their problems. Like my partner and I say it all the time. Sometimes I'm like, can you just make a choice? Because like my day-to-day is making choices, whether it's what I'm doing on this aspect of the job, what labor I'm allocating to this piece of work, whether we're going to jump on this slab and finish it now or not. And do I cancel this and do this tomorrow, but I know the deadline's today. And like, there's so many decisions that I feel like in my life I have to make on the day to day. And they're decisions that I just don't want to make. Like I just can't be fucked making. But in my situation, and I'm the provider, I'm in a place of work where I need to have that responsibility, and it can become quite overwhelming. And I suppose if you're raising a child with medical needs or disability or trauma or whatever, it's sort of amplified tenfold, because you're not just juggling responsibilities, but you're also juggling like an entire medical world, and that's exhausting. And I'm very lucky that my wife deals with a lot of that side of things, because when I have tried to over the years, it just becomes too much, and I end up falling into what we were speaking about before, like withdrawal and anger and that stress. And, and then I suppose the pressure of it all, is this financial stress that follows everything we're talking about. It just sits as like a background noise, like a white noise that just keeps playing in your head. And, in today's, I suppose, economy, it's quite a weight to carry. And I suppose we, like, as men, we don't just worry about like the money when it comes to that. Like, we worry about like, am I providing enough? And what money represents. And I think what money represents, I suppose, is, again, am I providing enough? am I failing my family by not making enough money? Like, am I doing enough, or will they be okay if something happens to me? Which is something that I've slowly been thinking about over the years. Like, if something did happen to me, like, working in construction, it is like quite a high risk environment. Like, if something did happen to me, would they be okay? And you, those are the sort of things that can sort of keep you awake at night. But again, these are common things that men go through, and from a lot of men that I've spoken to, seem to be reoccurring issues. And then with that comes sort of the identity side of it as well. So you sort of lose yourself, your hobbies disappear, friendships start to go quiet, you start to drift, your passions start to fade out, and then one day you look around, and I suppose like your whole identity has just become like a dad, a partner, a provider, and a worker. And I suppose you don't really know who you are outside those roles. Like me doing this podcast, it's extremely hard to manage when I'm going to do it and how I'm going to do it. And at times it can just be like, you know what, fuck it. I don't have the time in my life to be able to do this or facilitate this space because I've got so much going on personally. But then I also have the music side of things that I do. And it's like, well, that's a passion of mine. That's a hobby. So it's really about sort of sitting there and taking the time to do something good for yourself and something that's fulfilling. Catching up with mates and stuff doesn't have to be going and drinking 40 beers and waking up with regret from the day before. It could just, just be going fishing or going for a run or going to the gym or whatever it may be. I've found I've kept a lot of friendships over the years just by phone calls. And I'm lucky because a lot of my mates work similar hours to me. So I can call them on the way to work. I can call them after work. I can call them on lunch, smoko, whatever. And I know that they're there, or that if they miss it, they'll call me back. But when you've got people who are at different points in their life, it can be quite difficult. I do have a couple of mates who aren't in the industry, and I see them every so often. And when I do, it's great and I'm grateful. But other times I just, they call me at a certain time of the day once I'm home. They're returning my call. They're doing what they think's right. And I'm just like, I don't have the time to speak to you right now. I'm exhausted. So again, let's work along this journey, along this walk. Let's try and, make it a thing for ourselves that we sort of do prioritize a bit of our own needs. And don't feel guilty about it. It's easier said than done. I still do it now where I feel really guilty for not spending, like even this morning, I've gone to another space to be able to do this talk. And I feel like, I'm on my holiday. I'm missing out on a morning of waking up to my kids. But the benefit of me doing this is that like my cup is filled for a period of time. And then once I start to feel that cup starting to get empty again, then, I'm pretty open and honest with my wife. And I just say to her, look, I need to go and do this again, or I need to go and record, or I need to, whatever it may be. So I suppose, with everything we've spoken about already, it's the next thing would be sort of the impact on relationships and fatherhood. And this is a big one because we don't really cope well. Like when we aren't coping well, the ones around us struggle the most. Your emotional shutdown doesn't look like sadness. It sort of looks like distance, short answers, irritability, exhaustion, silence. And, often our partners feel like we're pulling away from them. And I was actually discussing this the other day, I think with my parents and my wife. And I was like, I can't remember a period of time before I was like 18 that I wasn't exhausted, which is sad. Like that's, and that's why I'm trying to flip the script now and make changes to sort of be a better version of myself. But when you're exhausted all the time, it's so hard to stay, that perky. And I truly believe it. Like people who are always like, oh, smile, I'm always happy, I'm this and that. It's just a fucking facade. Like we're not all happy. We're never always going to be all happy. But it's about being content with not being happy. Like you're not feeling yourself, that's fine. You need that moment, you need that day, you need that half a day to be in that mood, sit with it, whatever. If you want to talk, I'm here. If you don't want to talk about it, do what you need to do. But don't carry this on for day after day. Let's work through it and get past it and manage it. And I think we're not really pulling away from our partners. We're kind of pulling away from ourselves. And when we're overwhelmed, we don't really know how to say it. And when we're mentally exhausted, we can, I suppose, be physically present, but emotionally absent. And that's a tough one too. Like I've done that a lot of the times. Like I've been so depleted mentally that I'm sitting there and I'm thinking I'm doing the right thing. I've come home from work and I'm sitting on the mat with my child and I'm present, but I'm staring out the window at nothing and there's nothing in my head. Like I'm not actually enjoying the time with them, and I'm not invested into what we're doing. So now it's sort of when I catch myself doing that, it might just be like, hey mate, daddy's just going to go get a water. Do you need anything? Nah, I'll get up, I'll do that, take a couple breaths, come back, and then like switch off. Another thing that I've done is like the moment I walk inside the house, my phone goes on do not disturb. And that way, if someone needs to call me and it's an emergency, they have to call me twice. And that way I know that someone's genuinely trying to get through to me. But if someone's just trying to call or catch up, whatever, I'm not going to even just have that distraction of seeing my phone go off because I know I'll check it. And it's gotten better over time. Now I just leave my phone in another room. I don't really fucking think about it. But you need to be able to get yourself, I suppose, to that point. And I suppose not being emotionally present, even though you physically are, like it starts to create a lot of guilt. And the guilt for not having energy, guilt for not being playful, guilt for not being the dad that we thought we would be. And then when that guilt starts to build up, it damages the way we see ourselves. And self-talk is a massive thing, something that I continuously am working on. I've had so many times where I've just been like, you're a fucking piece of shit. You aren't a good dad. I stress if my children enjoy having me around or my wife enjoys having me around. And, we've spoken about it before, or I've spoken about it before where, people go, oh, where's that beautiful little boy from years ago? And where's he gone? But it's just like, man, I'm just who I am now. Like, don't keep putting all these pressures on me because it doesn't facilitate your needs. Like I am who I am and I'm working on who I am, something that a lot of people in older generations around me have never done. And it shows. A lot of them just have put their problems to the side and had this false narrative that they are okay and that they are happy and that they are, what happened to them when they were younger or whatever, it doesn't bother them. It's like it does. And had you put the time in, or had you started, or even start now putting the time in 12 months' time, you'd be a completely different person. Like 12 months ago, 2 years ago, this was not me. Who's speaking to you now was not me. But it's taken a long time to get from that. And it's taken a long time for me to get past the guilt side of things, because you got to realize you're not always going to be perfect. You might say something to your kids with the wrong tone or change your voice, or which is, you don't have to physically harm your kids. I wish no one does, but you don't have to physically harm them to harm them. You can harm them with changes in your voice that creates a sense of fear. And, and then you carry guilt. You're like, oh, I'm the worst dad in the world because I raised my voice. I'm the worst dad in the world because I told them to go away or whatever. And I've been there before, and it's not easy. It's not easy at all, but it's about getting better and better. And like I said, go back 12 months to 2 years ago. Like the person who's speaking to you now, I wasn't this person. But you got to realize that, I suppose, families don't need a perfect dad. They just need a present one and a real one. So when you are your real version of yourself and you do stuff up, it's about being able to repair that. My wife says that all the time. It's probably the best thing she's ever said. She's like, it's okay. You didn't mean it. Now repair it. And it's become something in our house that we even do with our kids. It's like if they say something, it's like, Soul, probably not Atlas. Atlas can't talk, but like Soul will, he's very in tune with emotions and himself, and he'll come up and he'll be like, I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm like, mate, you've already repaired it. It's all good. Let's move forward. Or what can we do? We go and repair it, go and say sorry. So, and I suppose presence doesn't come from never being overwhelmed. It comes from learning how to cope with being overwhelmed. So you're going to be overwhelmed a lot of the time during your journey in parenthood and fatherhood and even throughout life, even if you're not a parent. But it's about how you can cope with being overwhelmed. Especially in this current world, it is very overwhelming. And, I've spoken about it before. I'm fearful of the future and how that looks for the future generations. especially with the way the world is going and social media, and there's so many things that, we didn't even have to consider as young people, and now it's just the norm for the younger generations. And they're going to become extremely overwhelmed. And when they do become overwhelmed, it's about teaching them how to cope with it. And if they can't cope with it, well, then you've just got to sit with them in the fire and I suppose get through it. I suppose there's quite a few dark places that men do go. And these are things that I have seen firsthand from personal experience and also seeing from other people. So I suppose let's talk about the dark places and the places that men sort of hide to get away from it all. Those moments where you're sort of driving alone and you suddenly just break down. The nights you sort of lay awake staring at the ceiling, or you can't get comfortable, or you hop in bed and it's 9:00. Next thing you know, you check your phone and it's 1 a.m. and you haven't slept a peep because there's so much going on up in here. And the mornings where you feel empty before the day even starts. That's a common occurrence, I suppose, for myself, with what we go through. And again, having a child with medical needs or disabilities or trauma or whatever, it feel probably a lot of parents in that boat feel the same. You start the day on empty, and then all of a sudden you've got to find the energy to not be on empty anymore. And then by the time you go through and do your day's work and you come home, you're even more empty than you were when you woke up, and then you've got to give another burst of energy, and it's quite hard to do. And you start to feel failure and you start to burn out, and that feeling of everything rests on your shoulders is a huge weight to carry. And it is something that doesn't get easier, but it probably feels like it increases over time, but it gets easier with how you can manage it. I suppose there's a fear around men wanting to express that they're struggling, because what if people look at you differently? Who gives a fuck? I mean that in the most nicest way possible. Like, if you're struggling, then speak up about it and talk about it, because that's the best way to manage it and to start the ball rolling on transforming, I suppose, yourself and your needs and bettering yourself for your family. What if people think you're weak, and what if you break the illusion that you've got it all together? Like, I've had people before be like, oh, you're such an amazing, you and your wife, amazing parents. Well, I'm just like, man, if you were behind closed doors, you would see how hard it is. Like, and then now we sort of have this thing where we don't sugarcoat it to anyone anymore. For a while we did, because you don't want people to be like, oh, that's their narrative and that's it. But like, it's fucking hard. It's extremely hard, and it doesn't get any easier. And I don't see it getting any easier. I don't forecast it getting better. If not, probably get harder. But it's, you don't have to always have it all together. And I suppose we don't go to these dark places because we're weak as men. We go there because, we fight these battles alone a lot of the time. And silence is an extremely difficult place to live in, because guilt grows and shame thrives in that area, in that space. And I suppose, the whole point of this episode and this podcast is to remind you that you don't have to fight there anymore alone. There are a lot of people going through what you're going through, even though you don't think it. I've thought I was the only person in the world going through what I'm going through with my son. And then you start to see all these other families and these other people, and even just things that you can relate to, other parents. If you do have a child with complex needs, there still are similarities in them just being a child. The lack of sleep, the trying to regain control because they get into a stage where you tell them no and can't do that, and they don't like it. So there's a lot of similarities in parenting with everyone, even if you do have a different journey, like my journey. But you need to speak up and find, I suppose, those little silver linings and run with it as best you can, and don't sit in a place of silence and shame and guilt, and because they'll start to thrive in that space and they'll consume you, and you don't want to be consumed by it. Trust me. Been there many times. Like I said, had to rebuild and rebuild and rebuild, and it's a constant rebuild. So let's just keep working towards positive outcomes. Healthy mechanisms, I suppose, for overwhelmed fathers. My advice would be sort of start small, maybe talking openly, admitting you're struggling, maybe some grounding techniques. Again, this documentary last night, there was a man who said he would just go out into nature and just touch and feel things and walk around and be connected with the outdoors, and or just even like 5-minute reset practices where you might have like tools that, for 5 minutes you go and do something, you come back. It could just be step out of the room and write down what was going through your head at that time, or like I've said before, for me, if I do wake up feeling really overwhelmed, it's probably not the best way to do it, but I say to my wife, I'm going to get a coffee. I'll be back. Do you want one? And over this break, I've taken Sol with me a couple of times, and he enjoys it. I don't want him to think he's a burden. I don't want to take him everywhere or take him anywhere. So I've been taking him with me, and it's been quite nice in the mornings and all throughout the day, just going to get a coffee, and it gets him out of the house, and which is difficult with these Melbourne weather and these hot days. But yeah, it's really about being able to just reset yourself in those moments. I've heard that like breath work is fantastic. I've never ever tried it. I am trying to do a bit of research into it, but if that's something that I suppose excites your interest, then like definitely look into it. And I suppose you don't heal by like overhauling your entire life. You just heal through like small intentional shifts, and they're things like, for me, the whole breathwork thing never really crossed my mind. But the more I'm seeing people doing it and the more I'm seeing the benefits of it, it's like, well, I'll start researching into that. And if you guys want me to find some tools or places that have good techniques for that, I'm more than happy to look them up and put them up on the page and give you the help that I can. I suppose journaling, like, you could just have prompts in your journal, like, what scared me today, or what am I holding in today, or what's the pressure feel like in my body? What's my mindset? I sort of make notes in my phone because it's just easier having it on you. I don't really have the time to take a book out and write throughout the day, but I'm trying to this year we'll be trying to get into a habit of like sitting down before bed and writing down what I felt from the day and things that annoyed me, things that brought me joy, whatever. And then what were 3 things you're grateful for? And you do all that kind of stuff. And it gets easier over time because all of a sudden you start, and it could be something so small. It could be like, and give yourself some goals to do each day. Like, hug my wife, or give everyone in the house a cuddle and a kiss before we go to work. And there's small little intentional things that then will change your mindset. Probably start looking at building connection again, reconnecting with mates, maybe find some male spaces, some men's groups. It's sort of in our space at the moment, it's quite difficult because we're in between moving from one place to another, and it's hard to try and find a men's group at the moment. But I'd love to one day facilitate one, especially for, fathers and young men, and just get us all together and hear what people's struggles are. And that way they feel like, or they definitely should know by then, that they're not alone. Just by, starting conversations, I'm not okay, I'm not feeling okay, and have that with those people who are in your safe space, build that connection. Doesn't mean you've always got to go to the same person, but like I've said to you before, in previous episodes, I've got a core group of mates that I could call up right now and just say, like, I'm struggling, I'm not okay, and know that I'll have a set of ears from them to be able to listen and take it all in. I suppose tools for conflict and stress at home is sort of pause before you react, which isn't always easy when you're tired and run down with kids. But yeah, pause before reacting. Think about what you're going to do. Think about what you're going to say. Communicate vulnerability, especially with your partner and also with your children. Ask them how they're going. Ask them, like we sit down at dinner and we talk about, how was everyone's day and what was something you were grateful for today. And I found that it's definitely opened up my eyes, because you see the little things that the kids remember, and they're things that you've forgotten throughout the day. And you're like, wow, yeah, that was a beautiful moment. And again, repair conversations, have the ability to, not have too much ego and be able to repair things with people, especially, and with your family. Like, your family are the ones who love you unconditionally. And when I say family, I mean like your partner and your children, that they love you unconditionally. And you need to realize that, you can't take all your anger and your stress and everything out on them. It's just not fair. You need to start doing stuff that is a better way of remediating how you're feeling. And then lastly would probably be reconnect with yourself, start doing your hobbies, your routines, your creativity, get, small self-care habits. Might be washing your face with I don't know, cleanser and then putting cream on in the morning, or it could be going to the gym. It could be, making music, doing something like this. I mean, like, this is the first one we've done in front of a camera, and I was shitting myself the whole time leading up. I went and got a camera, and I was like, oh, did I waste money by buying it? I've got to get in front of it. But you've got to break down those I suppose, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and really reconnect with yourself and get back into what you enjoy, and don't feel guilty about it. If it means, to start off with, you do have to get up like I do in the morning at 4:30, 5 o'clock to go to the gym to get that routine going, then a week or two you'll be conditioned to being up at that time. So what's a week or two of doing that in comparison to not doing it and doing the same shit you're already doing, and you're not content with how that's going? So take those small risks, take those small steps. I suppose, there's a message here for fathers listening, and it's that you're not alone, and you're not failing, and you're not weak for feeling overwhelmed. You're a father carrying more than most people understand, and you're doing a lot better than what you think you are. I'll tell you that. Some people won't tell you that. It's a weird thing, I think, in society, where you do get a lot of people who don't want to see others flourish, but just know that you are flourishing. You're doing a fantastic job. And your kids don't need like a massive superhero. They just need you, and they need the best version of you. Whether it's, even if you're a tired, imperfect human, they just need you. And you're the one who's going to shape them, mold them, and turn them into little adults to be able to step into the world. And also need to realize that they're just kids, and let them enjoy being kids. If the place is messy and filthy and they're not listening, well, that's what they're genetically designed to do. And it's a tough one, because I'm speaking from a space of, like, I live it. I've got 2 young ones, and it is very hard, especially if you've just cleaned the entire house, or you've done something and then it's just trash, and you're like, fuck, what was the point? But you've got to, just be you, and that's more than enough. And I suppose, like, if you're still listening to this, like, just know, like asking for help is the biggest thing that you can do. You deserve support, you deserve rest, and you deserve peace. And it's not being selfish. That's putting yourself first, and you need to be able to put yourself first so that others come first as well. And you really deserve at the core to feel like yourself again. And that needs to be understood, because by not feeling yourself, you're going to feel extremely overwhelmed, extremely stressed, run down, withdrawn. Get that love for yourself back, or get that love for the things you enjoy in life back, is I suppose the key message that I want to project from today, as a father personally who is trying to get himself back, and again, been able to start finding who I am again by putting routines in place and going to the gym and doing this podcast. But it all takes time. It's baby steps. Don't, it's a journey of, like I've said before, it's progression, not perfection. Start with small intentional shifts, and you'll find that then it will become bigger steps, and it'll be a lot easier to manage than trying to overhaul your entire life, because that's not going to happen, especially if you've got 1 child, 2, 10, whatever it may be. You try and overhaul your entire life, you're going to overhaul theirs too, and probably make it a worse impact than by just doing small things and just taking your time. So I suppose just want to say thank you for listening to The Walk and showing up again today. It's not just, not just for this podcast, but showing up for yourself as well. I really appreciate you taking the time. And if, this has helped you in any way, please share it with a friend or another father or someone you think who might need to hear it. You can follow along on Instagram on our page. And also remember, like, you just don't have to carry the weight alone. It gets easier. Again, feel free to reach out to me on the page online or on YouTube, leave comments, whatever it may be. Follow, like, subscribe, whatever it is, it allows this community to grow. So yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. I'm Jake Donnelly, and this is The Walk.